Hey everybody, this is Joel Toppin here, and what I'm going to do in this video is give you a sneak peek at the VASSAL module for A Distant Plane, which is the third volume in the Coin series. This particular game is designed by Brian Train and Volko Runke. Topic is insurgency in Afghanistan. VASSAL module, much like Cuba Libre, is going to have a lot of automation in it to help facilitate gameplay. So I thought I'd give you just a quick tour of the VASSAL module and what you can expect with this. Now, a lot of what I did in the video for Cuba Libre, I also did in this particular VASSAL module. So some of this will be familiar if you saw the video on Cuba Libre. There's still a few bugs in the module, so it's not quite done yet, but it's getting pretty close. I've also added a few things to this VASSAL module that I have subsequently also added into the Cuba Libre module. This game's fairly complex. Of the Coin Series games, this is the most complex of the series. It's definitely more complex than Cuba Libre, and it's also more complex than Andean Abyss. There's a lot of things happening in this particular game, and it's one of those games where you make one change in one space, and it can affect a number of different things simultaneously. So to help with that, I've done a lot of programming in the background that helps calculate victory goals and runs all that stuff in the background so you don't have to constantly be moving markers around. The tricky part is making sure it's doing the calculations accurately. Alright, so what it'll do is in the background, one of the goals for the government, what the government wants to do, the government of Afghanistan wants to maintain coin control, counterinsurgency control of the country's population, and to that they want to add something known as patronage. So here at the beginning of the game, the VASSAL module knows that the government has 5 patronage points, and if we were to run around the map and total up the population values wherever the coin control markers are, and we added that sum to 5, the number of patronage, we would come up with 17, which is the accurate count. Now, if we make any changes in the module, for example, here in Kunduz, let's just say that we take our troop here and we did a sweep into the province of Balkh. If we were to do that, we lose control. The government would lose control of Kunduz, which is going to do a number of things at the same time. First of all, the coin plus patronage is going to drop by 2 points because the Kunduz has a population of 2. Second thing that happens is the victory goal for the warlord faction is they want to maintain uncontrolled population. That is, they don't want any control markers in the spaces. That's one of their 2 victory goals, is to have uncontrolled population at 16 or higher, and at the same time they want to have resources up above 40, so 41 or higher. In some ways they're going to function like the cartels in Andean Abyss, but their goal in this game is more facilitating chaos throughout the country. So they're really nobody's, there are no friends in this game. The warlord faction is definitely more, I should say, exciting to play, perhaps, than the cartel faction was in Andean Abyss. So some really neat stuff going on there. But you can see the VASSAL module will handle all of this calculation. The goal for the coalition is they want to maintain support for the government. Right now, there's no support anywhere in the country for the coalition. So they want to maintain support over the population, and they want to have to that they're going to add the number of available troops. Now, in the physical game, you're going to put a cube in each of these little boxes, and that's going to help you to facilitate the counting manually. Here in the VASSAL module, I just use a deck down here, which is a much easier way to run the computations. Right now, the VASSAL module calculates 12 cubes as being in this particular stack, and to that value is adding 5, which is the number of bases that are still here in the available forces box. So you have a total of 17 available forces, and because there's no support anywhere in the government, the total support plus available troops, or available forces, I should say, is 17. Now, should the coalition, let's say that they did something in Herat down here, okay, the government's got some pieces in there, but let's say that the coalition forces maintained a presence there and got some support. We add support to Herat. There we go. Automatically, it adds the support up here and moves the counter, so you don't have to handle all of that stuff. If we lose support, it moves the counter back. The goal for the Taliban is they want to maintain opposition plus number of bases. Right now, if we look at the Taliban available forces, you can see that there are 8 bases that are on the map. There's 4 uncovered here, or 4 covered up here in the available forces bin. So they got a bunch of their bases out around the map. Total of 8 of them. So the counter here is showing 8. If they were to, let's say, down in Helmand, let's say they did something down here, and they were able to get opposition, just click on neutral, make it opposition, you'll see that it moved the opposition plus bases up to 9. So just kind of some cool stuff that the Vassal module will do. Go ahead and take this thing and I can put them back toward neutral. So it does all kinds of neat stuff, runs all kinds of computations and whatnot in the background. It's a pretty helpful thing that it does. Now, the goal for the warlords, as I said, is to maintain uncontrolled population. The Vassal module, as I showed you earlier, it does automatically calculate the control. So you don't actually have to manually right-click on these markers or do anything. As you make any adjustments, for example, if the coalition troop moves onto this lock here, move this guy with them, they'll lose control of Kandahar, and of course that's going to move the coin plus patronage marker down. And it pushed the uncontrolled population marker up as well. So, you know, it does all kinds of neat things for you. It's a very helpful tool. If the warlord faction were to take this guerrilla and move him into here, into Arozgan, you'll see it push the uncontrolled population marker up because the Taliban just lost control there. And if they were to march back, it would automatically make the adjustment for you. Pretty neat stuff. I probably will not go back over Andean Abyss and add the automatic control because it's a fairly complex set of procedures to do, and it's really not necessary in Andean Abyss because you only track it during a propaganda round, whereas in Cuba Libre and in Distant Plain, that's done more dynamically on the fly. And it's something that's more important as the game progresses, not just in the propaganda rounds. It's important at all times. So I probably won't go ahead and put that feature back into Andean Abyss like I have here. I did insert the automatic control into the Cuba Libre module. A couple other things the module will do for you. If you go to the deck prep window, you can create a fairly substantial game here. You can have a long game, which uses all 72 cards, plus it's going to have 6 propaganda rounds. You do that, you just click this button here, and it'll automatically create the deck for you. The main game is only going to use 5 propaganda cards, and it's going to leave 12 cards behind here in the discard pile. Now, in a physical game, what you'll do is you'll actually take 12 cards out, you look at them, if any of them have coalition capabilities, the coalition automatically gets those capabilities, and you put the markers in the coalition capabilities box, which is located here on the map. At the same time, you look, and if there's any cards that have Taliban capabilities, you put those Taliban capabilities down here in this box. So that's of the cards that you remove from the deck before you create the deck. Well, in the Vassal module, it actually creates the deck backwards, but it achieves the same effect. It automatically shuffles up these cards, deals them out to the stacks here, to the 5 stacks, shuffles each individual stack, and then piles them on top of one another onto the map. And it piles them in this box right here. For the cards that remain behind, it goes through those unused cards one by one, checks them to find out if they have any government or Taliban capabilities, and if they do, it creates the marker and automatically sends it to the appropriate box on the map. For the short game, there is a short game button here. If you click that button, it creates a smaller deck, only going to use 4 propaganda rounds. And it's going to leave 24 cards behind, and it's going to look through those for either government and or Taliban capabilities. So just for grins here, I'm going to go ahead and click the short game button. When I do that, you'll see it left these behind because we didn't use those propaganda cards. It left 24 cards in the discard pile. And if we look here on the map, you'll see that it found that of those 12 cards, the Find Fix, VSOs, PRTs, Predators, and Aerostat events were left behind, or if we were doing a physical game, they would have been removed beforehand, and so the capabilities are available to the Coalition faction. If we go over to the Taliban side, they did a little bit less fortunate. They only got road IEDs and night letters as their special abilities to start the game. For the Islamabad track, and that's kind of a cool little thing that it does with the deck. For the Islamabad track, I made the marker unmovable. You can right-click it to show the pop-up menu, but the easiest thing is just to select it and do a control bracket. Bracket left moves it left, bracket right moves it right. When it reaches the end of the track, it automatically senses that and will flip it to hard, at which point no further movement to the right is allowed. And if you go to move it to the left, it'll automatically move it off of hard if it's set there. Otherwise, it will move it to the left until it reaches the bump edge where it'll flip it hard again and disable any further leftward movement. So a lot of neat little automation in the game to help smooth things out. Of course, the sequence of play, display, all the features from Andean Abyss and Cuba Libre have been re-implemented in here. It does everything that it did in the previous modules. It automatically will shuffle those tokens around and put them in their appropriate places when you hit the end card play button on the toolbar. Something I have added to the Cuba Libre module as well as to this module is I have added spaces for upcoming card, current event card, and momentum cards. There are right-click functions on cards to send them to the momentum cards area over here so you can keep them on the map face up for people to read. Over on the left-hand side, the purpose of these spaces is because the mouse over function really doesn't work on decks, and that's what I've created here is a deck. And so if I make this face up, you can see the topmost card, but the mouse over function doesn't work, and so it's kind of inconvenient for viewing the upcoming card. So to handle this, I've actually staged things into two more spaces. If I click the Draw Card button here on the toolbar, it'll automatically take any card in the upcoming event card area, and it'll slide it down here to Current Event Card, and then it takes the topmost card off the deck and plops it right here in the upcoming card space. So because I pressed this button and there was nothing in either spaces, it only added one card for us. Now if I click it a second time, you'll see that it slid the Islamabad Blacks Resupply event down to current event card. That's our current event card, and as you can see here, the mouse over function does indeed work on that card, so it's easy to read, even if you're zoomed out and you've got a small screen on your laptop. On upcoming event, same thing is true. So it took the topmost card, moved it there. So now when you go to, before you click this button to draw a card again, you do need to discard the current event card. If you don't, it's just going to plop this on top of that, and it's going to be a little inconvenient. I'll show you what I mean by that. If I click draw a card now, you'll see that it added the US-Pakistan talks here, but now the mouse over function is going to take up more of your screen than it would before. So it's usually advised to just go ahead and take the current event card and just discard it, get rid of it until before you hit that draw card button. And that way there's only one card right there. I didn't add an automatic discard to this button because of some technical issues. It's not nearly as simple as you would think, mainly owing to the fact that there are going to be cards face up on the map that are going to be over here on the right hand side when you have momentum cards, and so it's not a cut and dry thing. I don't really want to go into the technical details, but it's not a simple fact. Let's just put it that way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run through a couple of these till I find a momentum card. There's one. Okay, so on a momentum card, if we right click on that, there's an opportunity to play it to momentum. If it's not a momentum card, there is no right click ability. It's just a discard or flip face up, face down function. So what we'll do here is I'll play that to momentum, and it plops it here in the center, and then you can reposition them as desired. When you click the reset phase button, it will automatically discard all of these momentum cards as well, which is kind of cool. If you want to know how many cards are in the discard pile, you can look over here back at the deck prep window. All the cards, when you discard them, they go back into this leftmost stack, and it does a counter here to show you how many cards are in there. So if you want to know how many cards you burn through in the course of a game, simply take this value here and subtract the number of cards that began the game in that particular space. For example, in the short game, you began the game with 24 cards in discard, so if it reads 26 in discard, you know you burned through exactly 2 cards. So I'm Joel Toppin, and that's just an inside look at the VASSAL module here. Oh, one last thing I should show you is that the returnees, this is probably the most complex part of the module programming, was the returnees. When you throw these onto the spaces, it adds 1 to the population value, and the module automatically is able to detect that and run the computations up here on the track accurately. Also, as in Cuba Libre, I did add the +1 resource buttons up here. So you can go +1. If I do that, it adds the resource token value here to the for the government. You'll notice that there is no coalition resource token, and that's intentional because the coalition spends the government's money, which is kind of a cool mechanic in the game. They're enemy factions to one another, but they have to kind of cooperate because they're using one another's resources. So it's a very neat mechanic in this particular game. You also can add aid, so you can handle the aid button. So I move this, it moves the aid button. And the Taliban, they can add their resources down here. If you want to do it manually, you can take the government and put them down to 30 again. And you can see here it did automatically reset the count. And so if I decide to go back to these buttons here, it will function correctly. So that's just an inside look at Andean Abyss, or excuse me, Distant Plain, and the VASSAL module we've made for it. We'll be releasing the VASSAL module to the public here as the game begins to ship.